I would like to welcome everyone to the Insomniac Studio. I'm Brian Sink, and for the next hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, my job is to entertain you. So, this is a special portrait that I'm doing tonight. I'm not always painting on these videos. I explore lots of creative endeavors, from music recording, live playing, painting, and just some conversations about creativity with other folks. But tonight, very special portrait. I'm doing a painting of an old dear friend of mine named Mark Sissel. He's a fellow Iowa boy, and Mark and I were in a band together in the late 70s. And the band had several different names. It was really hard for our band to get rehired at a club, so we changed the name every couple of months to stay ahead of the bad press. Not really. We were a pretty good band. Anyway, Mark and I traveled all over the Intermountain Midwest, Canada, Alaska. A lot of road miles under our belts together. So let me show you what I'm working on here. This is the drawing that I've done of Mark, and it's from this reference photo. Let me pull this over here so you can get a nice look at this. Hopefully you can see that. That's the reference photo that I'm working from, and that will be in frame quite a bit of the time while I'm painting. Now, I always tell people that I'm not doing these videos because I am trying to represent that I'm a great artist or that I have something to teach anyone about painting. I just enjoy it very much, and I've been fortunate enough to sell a few paintings, and people seem to like them when I do them. But I'll kind of describe my process as I go and tell you some stories about Mark and I. Hopefully I'll get some of them right. Anyway, what I'm going to start with tonight is I've already done the background, and it's just blocked in. I'm going to do some more work on this background, but it's generally there. I didn't want to bore anybody with having to paint that in front of you. But what I do want to do right now is just lay in some color, some darks and some lights. So I'm going to pick some areas. You know what? I need a little bit more of this denim blue. Oh, I dropped a brush. Holy cow, we could have all been killed. All right, so I'm going to put some more blue. I'm going to put some more blue on the palette. And I'm starting with a few more colors than I will generally have, and that's because I'm painting this portrait right on the heels of another painting that I had earlier yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so I've still got some of the color left over from that portrait as well. So in general here, I've got black and white and 4 other colors. I've mixed some things on the palette already, some flesh tones and so forth. I'm using acrylic paints, so I'll be keeping my paintbrush moist and spritzing the palette to make sure that I'm not drying out the paint. There we go. And gosh, where to start? Well, blocking out darks. A little black, a little purple, and a touch of red. And this is just a first coat of paint. I paint in layers upon layers of paint. And with each successive layer, the colors become more locked in, and they kind of belong where they are. I've got a really rough sketch here, but a very nice reference photo. I'm pretty sure this is a professional photo. I don't know who to give credit to for the photo. I did not take this photo, and this is a photo that when I suggested to Mark that I might be painting him, this is a photo that he sent to me, one of his favorites, I think, and I see why. It's a really good painting. So where do I begin to tell the story of how I met this guy and what kind of path we followed to get to the places we are in our lives? Mark and I met, I'm pretty sure, if I'm getting this right in my memory, which is not the best in the world. But if I'm getting this right at all, Mark and I sort of met in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I had taken a job as a bar manager in Lake Charles. Now, before that time, I was a fairly good musician in my own right in a couple of other bands. And the bands that I had played in Lake Charles, I'm going to move this part of the painting down a little bit. Hopefully that's still in frame. Let me take a look at this and see what we've got. Yeah, you can still see that. Anyway, so I'm in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I'm married to a piano player. And her name is Jennifer Bacon. Well, it's Jennifer Sink at this point, but her name was Jennifer Bacon. Now, I met Jennifer at the University of Northern Iowa, where we both went to college for a couple of weeks together. I wasn't there very long. And Jennifer was an incredible musician, gifted with perfect pitch, and just a beautiful woman, smart, and just very quick with music, and had a good head on her shoulders, a good sensibility. In many ways, she's one of the best musicians that I ever had the pleasure to work with. And we were together for a few years. But we were in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and our band had just, I don't want to say broken up, although that probably is the best way to describe what happened to the band, is the band sort of dissolved in Lake Charles. We were playing at the Sheraton Chateau Charles in Lake Charles, Louisiana, a little rundown Sheraton in the shadows of the refineries. And from the front door, the front entrance of the Sheraton Chateau Charles Hotel, you could see the flames, the burn-off flames coming off the stacks at the oil refineries. And for a kid from Iowa, I'd never seen anything quite like that before. You could hear the flames burning constantly. It was pretty wild. Anyway, so there we are in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I had taken a job at a bar that we were the house band for a little while, and that's how we wound up at the Sheraton Chateau Charles. We were the house band, and we got our bands from a manager or a booking agent at that time who booked bands from all over the country and sent them our way, as did lots of hotels during that period. Back in the 70s, there was a circuit. Lots of my friends here in Iowa played the same circuit that I did. But there was a circuit that we would play, and we would play in different hotels every week or so. And you'd play 4 or 5 nights a week, and we would play no less than 3 hours a night, usually 4 hours a night, sometimes 5. And our set list was sort of preordained. All the bands on this circuit needed to be in the genre of what back then was called middle of the road top 40 music. So we were doing very generic top 40 songs, whatever was on the radio, and you had to learn 4 or 5 songs a week. So we went from being in the band at the Sheraton Chateau Charles in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We went from being in the band there to me being the manager of that bar. And Mark's band, who was on that circuit as well, wound up playing at the Sheraton. Only about 2 months after I took the job as the bar manager. So that's pretty interesting. So he was one of the first traveling musicians outside of my own band that I ever really had met, because you didn't run into fellow musicians as a person in a band that much because you were playing music, and so you were pretty preoccupied doing your gig, and it wasn't that easy, really, to meet other musicians. And when you did, it was a pleasure. It was really nice to run into other people that did the same job as you and were on the same circuit. So when I got the chance to meet Mark and his band, it was really cool. I got to get to know someone who did the same kind of work that I did and was traveling the same path, even though I had given up on the path a little bit, and Mark was still very much engaged in it. But I got to hang out with him and meet him, get to know him a little bit. We had some common interests, and he was an incredible guitar player. To me, it was magical how well he played. I'd never really met anyone of his caliber before, so I was overwhelmed with how good of just a raw playing style he had. It was just fantastic. So we hung out, drank a lot of beer together, just really got to know each other a bit, and we hadn't played professionally together yet at all. We were just hanging out. But one night I recall it as being a bit of a drunken stupor. One night I talked him into letting Jennifer, my wife, the piano player, Jennifer and I, in his band. And he said, yes. He said, yeah, let's do it, which I, to this day, don't understand why he did that, but it was sure wonderful for me that he did. So, we're at the Sheraton Chateau Charles. I'm a bar manager. Mark is a band leader of another band that's come to play at the Sheraton Chateau Charles. And we hit it off. We hit it off really well. Really like each other. Again, we had a lot of things in common and shared that having been band leaders, we liked a lot of the same kinds of music. We were kind of old-fashioned, old-timey country music fans, kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. The old-time country music had been replaced by the urban cowboy soundtrack, which we also loved the music off of as well. But it had taken over as the predominant country sound. And our Hank Williams and Red Sovine, all the Conway Twitties, a lot of that music had gone out of fashion. We still loved it. So we shared that as kind of a common bond. And we also liked the music of Jackson Browne. Both of us did quite a lot. We just had a tremendous amount of stuff in common with each other. And it was nice. It was nice to talk to somebody and hang out with somebody who had so many of those shared interests. It really was. Mark's cowboy hat, which is a signature of his, is illuminated by a lot of stage lighting in this photograph. So we're having some fun here, kind of popping the light into this hat. And we're going to work really hard to bring a quality of realism to this cowboy hat. Now, I'm a pretty, my painting style is not abstract necessarily, and certainly not, I wouldn't call myself a realist at all. I don't even dabble in realism. But I do try to find the character of my subject when I paint. I try to come up with as many of the, or as much of a likeness as I can possibly get. no portrait is really worth its salt if it doesn't have a great likeness and you can't tell at a glance who you've painted. I mean, that's really the litmus test for portrait work of the kind that I do. There are many, many, many kinds of portraits, but I try to bring some realism to it. Now, I've gotten to a part of the story where I have talked Mark into playing in a band with me. Well, that's pretty cool. And beyond that, we didn't really have a plan. I gave my notice at my job that I just got, just before that. I gave my notice at that job and let them know that I would be moving on and would not be staying as a manager at the Sheraton Chateau Charles in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And that I would be rejoining my bandmates for another trip around the country as a traveling band, which made me very happy, which was a decision I never regretted. And there we were, off and running. Our first gig was at the Sheraton Chateau Charles, where they invited us to play some. We were happy to stay there and do a few shows. Then I'm not sure how this evolved, and Mark may be watching this video and may chime in and let me know what his memory of it is. But I believe somehow we wound up in Tipton, Iowa, at his parents' house. Mark's dad, I believe, was a postman. Was he a postman? Anyway, we wound up at Mark's house. I'm not sure we were invited, but we wound up there, and that's where we put together our kind of obligatory 50-song top 40 rundown. We had to have that entree level of cover music. Right from the start, everybody knew that there was going to be a problem in that we were picking songs that they have a name for now. They call the genre, and everybody that's part of this genre despises the title. But it wasn't called this yet. It was kind of called FM rock or art rock. Sometimes it was lumped in with other forms of soft rock, but it was yacht rock. We were playing yacht rock way before yacht rock was cool. If yacht rock ever really got cool, and I'm not sure that it did. But that's what we were doing. Much to the chagrin and consternation of the people that were trying to book us. And I'll talk more about the guy that was booking us in a little bit here. But we were yacht rockers. And we would get comments from people like, we'd play a gig, this band, and we'd run into people in the elevator that were at the hotel we were playing at and watched us play. And they said, wow, we enjoyed your show very much. We'd buy an album if you had any albums out, but probably not come to see any more of your shows because it's kind of not what people like to listen to in clubs. Well, we knew that. We knew we were fighting an uphill battle with our early yacht rock endeavors. All right, so we put the band together. We go to Mark's folks' house down in Iowa, our hometown, our home state rather. Our home state. We're putting together a really good list of songs, but as I started to say, we knew we were in trouble from the beginning because we understood that what we were doing was going against the current. Because the hair bands were the thing, Hall & Oates was the closest thing that we came to the kind of music we were supposed to be playing. Mark was really good at playing Allman Brothers style guitars. The whole Southern rock thing, Mark was brilliant at the really hot guitar work. Now, my guitar playing was at best spotty. I was a decent fingerstyle guitarist. I had played a lot of James Taylor type stuff and liked it a lot, liked playing that sort of thing a lot. And I was okay at it. It managed to meld all right with what Mark was doing. But when I say that Mark Sissel was on another plane from the rest of the band in a whole different category, I mean that literally and with as much just in as genuine a way as I possibly can. Everybody knew that played with Mark, that there was something extraordinary about his playing, about his character. Mark was a real deal, still is a real deal. We'll talk more about what he's doing these days. I just visited in Nashville a couple of years ago, and we had a very nice time. So we put together our song list. We're playing 35 of the wrong songs, probably, and maybe 20 of the right ones. Maybe 10 of the right ones. Maybe we had, if I'm giving myself a lot of credit, we had 10 hairband songs that we could play, and we weren't good at them. It wasn't what we did. Our drummer had strong jazz influences. Our bass player was a Jaco Pastorius fanatic and would practice his Jaco Pastorius kind of moves, scales, attitude, had a fretless Gibson Ripper bass. This dude was talented and wanted to be Jaco Pastorius, which had absolutely nothing to do with what we were trying to play. So, we are on the circuit now. We're playing places all over. And one week, our manager would send us to Alaska, and the next month, we'd be in Casper, Wyoming, or Park City, Utah. We played Lacey, Idaho. We played, so many little small clubs. And we never really found the place that we ought to be playing. We never quite found out ourselves in the right place. We showed up at a gig once in Canada somewhere, and we pulled into the parking lot of the place we were going to be playing, and another band was pulling out in their semi-trailer with the semi-trailer full of gear. We got inside the place, and we had this tiny PA. We didn't even own stage monitors or lights. We had this tiny PA, and the guy that owned the place was so nice to us. And he said, well, fellas, you can't play here. I'm going to throw this paper towel away. You can't play here because they'll run you out of town if you try to play here. But what we can do is we can get you a job at my brother's pizza place down the street. So we wound up being the band at the pizza place for a few days, and that wasn't terrible either. It was okay. We kind of enjoyed that. All right, so those were the kinds of gigs that we were getting. Hotels, room and board. We even played a couple of gigs in gambling towns, casino towns. We played in Nevada a couple times, but only in Wendover, I guess, is one of the towns I remember playing at. But they were always little tertiary one-off spots, never We never played in Vegas as our band. I think that the band name that we went by most of the time was the Nathan Gray Band. I think that was what we wound up being for over a year, which was the longest we ever kept the name. And I've never been good at maintaining a band name. To this date, I still change band names all the time. I don't know why. Just a habit I got into way back then and have maintained to this day. So we're in the band. It's fun. We're playing in cities we've never been in and doing things we've never done. And it was all brand new to all of us, except for Mark. Mark had been down this road a little bit, and he sort of knew his way around. One of the many reasons that we respected him so much. But this wasn't brand new to Mark. He had experienced a bit of it in his past. So he was the road warrior. He was the guy that sort of knew his way around and had instant credibility with the rest of the band because he knew what was going on. And he was a monster player. So Mark kind of led the band musically. And he and the woman I was married to at the time, Jennifer Bacon, he and Jennifer were on a level closer to each other, I think, than the rest of the band. The drummer, whose name was Craig Goodell, he definitely caught up over time and became a great player. I, on the other hand, knew that I would never be one of them. I knew that I was never going to be the shredder guitar player, incredible singer, musician of the highest caliber type that Jennifer and Mark were. And Craig, well, they all were. I was the odd man out. And I'm pretty sure the only reason that any of them ever agreed to play with me is because I was married to the piano player. That's just almost a given. I was married to the piano player. And that was my end. And I always knew that. So we played places we shouldn't have, places we should have, places that were fun, places that were less than fun. We got fired once or twice. We got asked back, but seldom. We just weren't quite all that. But boy, was it ever fun. Now, when Mark finally had to let me know specifically that I wasn't quite up for the task of going to that next level with him, he was very kind about it. And lo and behold, not long after our band broke up, in the same breath practically as our band breaking up, in the same breath, Mark found himself in the position after a few different band changes and so forth. He found himself in the incredible position of being selected by Chris LeDoux to be his band leader. Now, Chris LeDoux is a rodeo cowboy. I'm going to get a lot of this wrong, and I apologize in advance for it, but I believe he was 1976 bareback champion, world bareback champion. So Chris had, wow, I mean, he was a real deal. And he made his fame by selling cassette tapes out of the back of a pickup truck at rodeos, and went on to become a person that was admired by country musicians and musicians of all ilks, all over the country. I think that he became especially famous when Garth Brooks mentioned Chris LeDoux in one of his songs. Anyway, I didn't know that much about Chris LeDoux. I had never listened to much of his music, but I became quite a fan. After Mark had been in the band for a little while, and I got to watch my old bandmate on TV a few times with Chris LeDoux. That was pretty cool. It was a really neat experience to see someone you had really knew in real life And I had one of those. I had one of those really cool I knew you when kind of experiences at that point, and that was awesome. Just roughing all this stuff out, trying to get some paint on this big old canvas. So as you can see, I haven't talked much about painting, I know, but I've got so much to talk about with the subject tonight. A really unusually large amount of things to cover, and I know I'm rambling, but that's part of what it's part of what I do, is I just ramble on about these things. Start putting a little bit of color on the hands down here, really brightly illuminated by stage light. So we want to show that. Get these hands starting to come out. Mark has a very distinctive way of holding his pick, which will be depicted here in the picture before too long. And of course, he won't remember a lot of these stories because they were pivotal to me. To him, they were a day in the life, I'm sure. But I remember him trying to teach me how to hold a pick the way he did, and of course, he got frustrated because I couldn't even begin to do the things he was doing. Mark had an incredible ear, also has an incredible ear. I asked him, if he got to play on any of the recordings that Chris did, and then Ned LeDoux after a bit. And Mark told me that the level of guitar playing in the Nashville studio scene was so high that he didn't really try to play on any of the songs in the studio. That was sort of a closed situation. And so he wasn't part of recording a lot of the albums. I know he played on a couple here and there. Also wrote some songs on Ned LeDoux's latest album. Still working on just getting some paint on the canvas. Not taking anything real seriously right now. That's why I'm talking so much. I'm just trying to have a nice time and visit with you and paint this painting. When I traveled with Mark, I was young. I was in my 20s. I'd just gotten married to Jennifer, the piano player. And everything was exciting. And nothing scared us, even though we were driving in a rickety old van through the wilderness of British Columbia. Often, we never seemed to be too afraid of it. Probably should have been a few times. Got ourselves in some strange situations. I remember riding in the back of the van and sleeping in the back of the van and waking up with the sensation of being in on some kind of a carnival ride. It was spinning, and I realized quickly that the van was out of control and we were spinning on ice at full highway speed in the middle of, I don't know, maybe Wyoming somewhere, in the middle of nowhere. And we were spinning, and we came to a stop, and at least one of our tires had blown out on the van. At least one tire, maybe more than one. At least one tire had blown out. And I either volunteered or got volunteered to walk into, try to hitch a ride or walk into the closest town to get some aid. And left the rest of the band at the van, came back with a tire repair. Remember, this is before cell phones and before really much of anything in terms of highway assistance. There was no highway assistance. Couldn't find anybody to help you in the middle of nowhere. So those were the kinds of things that we survived, and we were lucky that we did. Trying to mix some really vibrant dark blues for these shadows back here. I don't even like that. That's not even dark enough. Got some marine, ultramarine blue on my palette that I think is going to be a nice underpainting for this darkest section. Just now starting to move the paint around as though it was fabric and create some lines. Create some lines and make the fabric move a little bit for us. I apologize that I'm painting below your line of sight a little bit here. They put this back so I can work on the bottom of the painting. See how high I can get that? No, not quite that high, but we'll go up to there. This is all going to be pretty dark. Haven't begun to get it as dark as it will be. All right, add a little water to that brush. Mark's got his shirt tail out in this picture. Mark wasn't really this cool when I knew him. He was talented, but he wasn't nearly this cool. All this cool came afterwards. I think Chris gave him some lessons in stage presence and performing that stuck with him to this day. Mark is a great performer and very charismatic on the stage, and definitely is there to put on a show. When you see him play with Ned LeDoux, or if you've seen him play with Chris, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He dances around stage. I mean, when we met and we were playing together, we were both incredibly nerdy. Of course, we wore our obligatory late 70s tweed jackets with a t-shirt underneath and tight blue jeans. Tennis shoes were the footwear of the day. Mark played back then a Music Man guitar that I think he still has. I think he may. And it had a naked lady painted on the guitar. So there was I don't know what exactly that was about, but there was a naked lady painted on his guitar. And he has told me the story, but darn if I remember it. I don't know why he had a naked lady on his guitar. Yeah, there was nothing cool about us. Nothing cool about us at all. Now, the people in the band who were cool was our drummer. His name was Chris LeDoux. And Craig was a hipster before hipsters existed. He, everything from the way he stood, to the way he held his drumsticks, to the style that he would invoke when he got behind a drum kit. Craig was just cool. In a very modern hipster kind of way. Then we had Steve, the bass player, and Steve was a different kind of cool. He had